podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Paddock and the Pavilion with Stephen Wallace. In each show, Stephen will interview someone connected to the world of horse racing or cricket.
Hello everyone. Today's podcast is about a racehorse, Stradivarius, who retired at the end of the 2022 flat season, the winner of 7 Group 1s, including 3 Ascot Gold Cups. A racing legend of the past few years, the popular chestnut is now standing at stud at the National Stud in Newmarket. In this podcast, you will hear from Joe Bradley, the head of Bloodstock at the National Stud, Discover Newmarket guide Frankie McGhee, and Kitty Trice, a Racing Post Bloodstock journalist. But to begin the Stradivarius story, I spoke to Rab Havlin, a regular guest on the Paddock and the Pavilion, who was the first jockey to ride Strad back in the autumn of 2016. You rode Stradivarius in his first race at Nottingham on the 5th of October 2016. What do you remember about his first run, Rab?
I think we kind of expected him to run well. He was a bit green on the day. Nottingham's a tricky track with the undulations there. Things very flat, but it's actually a very undulating track. It used to be very flat, but not anymore. And I think they just probably caught him out a little bit, but he learned plenty from it.
He was quite late for his first run, 5th of October.
Yeah, but he was just a horse that needed a bit of time. He was a see the stars. We tend not to rush that type, even though he's he's not big, but you wouldn't call him small. The boss is always of the mind that, the horses will tell him when they're ready to push forward and when to ease back. So we took our time with him, and, there's a nice campaign for horses like that and nice novices that you can always run them. We run them as late as December,
But in his next race, you were riding against him on the mighty Cracksman. It was Cracksman's first run, and you beat Stradivarius.
Yeah, well, Cracksman was a big, laid-back character at home at the time, and Frankie was on Stradivarius, I'm quite sure he was favourite that day, and obviously Cracksman went on to win and be the champion that he was in his own right, so he wasn't beaten by a bad one.
Well, you were 4th on that day, and on his third run as a 2-year-old at Newcastle on the 7th of November on the all-weather over a mile, Stradivarius won the first of what was to be 20 wins.
Yeah, that's right. I remember he was quite tenacious that day because, Patsy Cosgrave had got up on a Said Ben Sarour horse and headed him, and he actually fought back at the line, and I'm quite sure it was a 3-way photo finish, and he fought back and put his ears back, and that was the first time we'd really seen that tenacity in him and that that will to win. So that was a nice way to end his 2-year-old campaign.
And did you think then that he would go on to be the leading horse that he became?
Well, it's always difficult to, you always hope that's the case, but it's always difficult to, you get caught out a bit by making those kind of gestures early on in a horse's career. You like to see them, doing it on the track. And obviously when he started his 3-year-old campaign, it was clear that, he was going to be something different.
And what would you sum up his qualities as a racehorse?
Well, he's very gutsy. He was very laid back at home. So he didn't get himself worked up, and he loved his grub, getting stuck into his grub. So, the thing I always remembered about him was, I used to always think he must have had enormous sized lungs because he could never get him to take a blow in a gallop, whether it be his first gallop of the year or his first one after a hard run the time before. He just would never blow, and other horses would be blowing after the gallop by the time they got back to the ring, and he wouldn't blow a candle up by the time he'd come off the end of the gallop. So that always stuck in my mind about him.
Because he had a turn of foot, and he won from 1 mile up to 2.5 miles.
Yeah, he was by no means a slow horse. When they run the coronation at Newmarket after COVID, behind Gaeth, who set some unbelievable fractions. I mean, he was third that day. So he was, we always thought that he could come back to a mile and a half because he was never a slow horse. In fact, after the coronation, I think it was probably one of his best victories when he went round in the Gold Cup and absolutely slaughtered them on the bridle. Just too quick for those type of horses. But I'm sure he would have run a lot better in the Arc had they just gone a gallop, but it was such a slow pace, muddling pace, just didn't really play to his strengths.
What was he like as a character? I know you got to know him quite well because you were riding him out during the COVID times.
Yeah, he was a character, all right. If you didn't know him when you went into the box, you think you were getting in there with a lion. He would come at you with his teeth and his ears back, but it was all bark and no bite really. When you get the tack on him, he'd muck around, getting the tack, and even on the heath when he seen another string coming to him, he'd puff himself up and start shouting, but he never really done anything about it. So he was a good ride, but he was a bit of a character, and he was well known on the heath. Everybody would point him out,
Now he's standing at Newmarket's National Stud. What qualities do you think he will bring as a stallion?
Well, obviously, the tenacity that he had. He was adaptable to any trip and any ground, really. He won on fast to bottomless ground. So any one of those attributes, if he passes off to his offspring, will be a bonus to anybody's. Obviously his protege will be a big bonus because, as I say, he wasn't just a slow 2.5 miler. He was quite quick at times when he wanted to be.
And still being local, do you think you'll drop in and see him during the year?
Yeah, it's funny because the lads went up a couple of weeks ago, but unfortunately I was racing that day. So, he's quite local. I'm sure I'll pop him at some point and go and have a look.
Let's hear from our main guest, Joe Bradley at the National Stud. What's your own role at the National Stud and your racing background, Joe?
Well, I suppose it's best to start off with my racing background, which is very minimal. Up until a certain point in my life, I've always followed racing, and I was always slightly more fascinated than the sort of, let's say, the normal average punter or person who watches horse racing. I went to university in Belfast. I studied public relations and finished that and sort of thought, well, what am I going to do now? So, like a lot of people, they decide to go to the other side of the world and try to figure it out from there. So I went to New Zealand, and with the idea that I would travel around and sort of just have a good time for a year. And I got a job after about 4 days of being in Auckland in a place called Wentwood Grange in Cambridge, which is like the Newmarket equivalent in New Zealand. It's the capital of sort of horse racing. And I hadn't really touched a horse before. I hadn't been around horses. And after probably 3 months, decided, yeah, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Ended up staying there for about 4.5 years, where I ended up sort of in a senior position within the farm. But the Hawkins family, who owns Wentwood Grange, were incredibly important in sort of forging and laying the foundations of my career. So that's where it all began.
So a real voyage of discovery going all that way to New Zealand then?
Yeah, a real voyage. I mean, I think a lot of young people some people are really lucky in that they know from a young age what they want to do and it all works out for them. But there's probably a large percentage of people who don't know what they want to do. And I was lucky enough to find it and lucky enough to still be involved in it. And then in my capacity here at the National Stud, then have the opportunity to develop young people or people who are interested in the industry through our education program here at the National Stud. So it's really satisfying to be able to bring young people into a room. Well, not necessarily young people, actually, people of all ages who similarly had not come from a racing or breeding background. And I can talk them through my experiences. And I think it gives a lot of people, I'd like to say a little bit of inspiration that this can be a really good career for someone.
Well, that's opening it up to people who, as you say, haven't got a racing background, which I think is important for the racing industry.
Absolutely. It's a big thing now, is inclusion and diversity. And as I said, I had no background, no background in horses. I could understand why people may feel that it's a hard industry to get into. There's some closed doors, and perhaps in the past that did exist. I think now it's very much opening up. I think there's great avenues in, and now it's really about showcasing those avenues and making sure that people are aware that you can come having never had a background in horses, and within the space of what we do here with the E2SE course in 9 weeks, we can then place you in a stud farm that's of the highest standard and highest quality. So it's very satisfying to be part of that.
And when did you become part of that at the National Stud at such a prestigious place?
It's an amazing place, yeah, the National Stud. It's soaked in history. It's a very important part of the whole wider thoroughbred industry in Britain. I started in October time. I started at the first day was on book 2. So that was a great time to start when everybody's in town, all the clients are here. So I've been here about 4 or 5 months, and a massive part of that has been Stradivarius and getting him started in his stud career. So it's been an exciting time, and now we are in the thick of it. The covering season has started. The foals are well underway. So it's a great time here at the National Stud.
So did Stradivarius, or Strad as the National Stud brand him, did he come before you or after you?
Just slightly after me. Slightly. I mean, it was a matter of weeks, really. I had known for a short period before I started the job that he was going to be standing here at the National Stud. So I had plenty of time to mull it over in my head, think about what the plan would be. And it's really nice, actually, that we started at the same time.
And how did it all come about that Stradivarius, who finished racing at the end of the 22 season, then moved to the National Stud? Yeah,
like most studs would have a radar and a good handle on what stallions or what colts are available to go to the stud at the end of the year. I think that everybody knew that Stradivarius was perhaps going to be retiring quite soon. And for us, he was a great fit for the National Stud for what we do. And then from our perspective, we looked at his race record, his pedigree, the way he won his races. And then we looked at him as physical, and we thought he ticked a lot of boxes, if not all the boxes. And to again secure him for stud duties here at the National Stud was really poignant and really, really great opportunity.
And how's he settled in?
He settled in really well. If you can have all these plans in place, and you, as I say, I can mull it over in my head, and I did for a long time. And often you find the horse just comes and does it himself. We have a great relationship with John Gosden, who was able to sort of impart his knowledge and his wisdom to do with Stradivarius. He knows the horse inside out, still does, still very much in contact with us here. So we knew what to do with the horse and how to keep him happy and how to get him settled into his life here at the National Stud. And it was a really straightforward process, and thankfully he's really enjoying himself. He's got a great life. He's very happy. And now, as the breeding season has started, he's even more happy.
Just a short talk about your other stallions, because you've got other ones at the National Stud, haven't you? Can you give me a brief outline of the other stallions?
Yeah, we're lucky here to have 4 stallions, one of them being Stradivarius, and 3 other stallions who are at a very important time in their career. We've got Time Test, who's an incredibly important horse for the National Stud. He's owned by the National Stud. Had an amazing first crop, was laden sire by black type winners, and last year continued that on with horses like Crypto Force, Rocky Gianni, who really established themselves as top class racehorses. And then going into this year, it's a huge season for him. But he's got 96 2-year-olds to run in Great Britain. He covered 160 mares in 2021 and 180 mares last year. So his biggest and best books are yet to come. We've Lope Fernandez, a son of Luke de Vega, the only son of Luke de Vega here in Great Britain, who's a very attractive horse. He was European champion sprinter. He's just had his first foals, who have a lot of quality, a lot of bone, and that's exactly what we thought they would have. So that's very satisfying and exciting to see. And then we have Raja Singh, who's been a really incredible horse. He received limited support in his first number of years. Even though he was a Coventry runner, he ran the Coventry in the fastest time. Who, as I said, he's limited support, but in his first crop of 2-year-olds had an incredible success and strike rate with 80% winners to runners. So I think people are now recognizing that trend and those statistics, and he'll cover significantly higher books than he's ever done, because he could produce a really nice, fast, speedy horse at a really affordable level, which is important for us here at the National Stud to be able to offer that, to, again, open up the doors for all breeders or anybody who's interested at an affordable level.
Sounds like you're really excited with the other 3 stallions as well as Stradivarius at the National Stud.
Yeah, it's just a really exciting time. And look, this is the exciting time of the year. The covering season has just started. We're not too far away from the flat racing beginning again. So we're all full of hope here. And that's the way it always is at this time of the year. And hopefully that continues, and it will continue, I've no doubt, throughout the rest of the season. And looking forward to seeing progeny from our stallions running in the biggest races.
Back to Stradivarius, he's going to be a big attraction for people coming to see him as part of the Discover Newmarket tours. And one person who will get to see Stradivarius is Discover Newmarket guide Frankie McGhee. And this is what she had to say about the Discover Newmarket tours and the chance to see Stradivarius at the National Stud. How excited are you, Frankie, at showing visitors Stradivarius at the National Stud on a Discover Newmarket tour?
Oh, Stephen, you can't say. Absolutely super. We're so lucky in Newmarket and at the National Stud to have the fabulous Stradivarius standing beside 3 other superb stallions.
And can you let listeners know what's on offer on a Discover Newmarket tour of the National Stud?
Well, yes. First of all, we ought to say they ought to come and see for themselves. But there is so much. Of course, there's Stradivarius, who everybody, as I say, is so excited about. Do you know, I'm sure John Gosden and Thaddy Gosden are very, very sad to have seen him go, but he's got a lovely new home and is working on his job description very, very well. I understand he's seen a couple of ladies already, so doing well. So there's Stradivarius and our other stallions. There's also, this time of year, the start of the foaling season. So we've had 3 or 4, I think, there already. But there's going to be lots of foals coming along, which, what a sight to see, the foals and their mums in the nursery paddocks. There's also statues around. There's the beautiful statue of Mill Reef. Mill Reef was owned by a gentleman called Paul Mellon. He was an American gentleman, brought Mill Reef over to England because he thought that the grass that we have over here, the turf, was better than the dirt they have in America. Now, we've also got a graveyard. Now, that's a bit off, really, isn't it? To say to our visitors, welcome to the National Stud. Let me take you around the graveyard. But the graveyard is so interesting because some of the horses that are buried there, I'm sure we've all heard of. There's Lester Piggott's first Derby winner, Never Say Die. And he was the first stallion to stand at the stud at the National Stud. We've got Pat Edery's 4,000th winner at the St. Leger, and that is Silver Patriarch. So we've got lots of stallions that people would have heard of. I love the one, Relpino. Now, that was owned by a lady who I won't say who. She believed that if she had a horse with 7 letters in its name, it would win the Derby. Well, she had 8 horses with 7 letters, but none of them won the Derby. So that's why I don't want to say her name and embarrass her. We've got the bust of Peter Burrell. Now, he's the gentleman that designed the National Stud as it is laid out. So there's lots and lots to see. I'm not going to tell you everything because, as I say, I want people to come and have a look for themselves. Oh, actually, I will tell you, for families, it's brilliant because we've got two boys, or should I say geldings, Lord Windermere and Tin Man. Now, they smell the polos as soon as we turn up, and there they are ready to have the polos from us grown-ups and from the children. They're very gentle. They are absolutely superb.
And Frankie, are there any age restrictions or restrictions on who can go on the tour at the National Stud?
Oh, no, everybody is welcome on the tours. What we actually do, we start by a bus journey into the centre of the stud, then park the bus, and the guides will walk people around to see the other areas. Plus children. Children are more than welcome because, as I say, we've got Lord Windermere and Tin Man who love their polos, and they love the children giving them polos.
And how long does the tour of the National Stud take?
Well, we actually say, Stephen, 90 minutes, but of course it depends upon the weather, because if it's really, really poor and cold, some people would prefer to sort of cut it a little bit short. It also depends who is out and about in the paddocks. So sometimes, we take a bit longer, sometimes a bit less, but average 90 minutes.
And how often do the Discover Newmarket tours of the National Stud take place?
Okay, well, the public tours are Friday, Saturday and Sundays. But then, of course, in between, we do private tours. And they're rather nice because if somebody really wants to ask lots of questions and just have a special tour on their own. So the public tours 3 days a week and private tours when anybody wants to book.
And how do you book them?
Right. That's easy peasy. Online, as everything is at the moment. So look on the Discover Newmarket website, and it's very easy to book there. And I have to add, Stephen, it's not just the National Stud tours. We do lots of other tours. So you can't say, well, I've done the National Stud, that's it. No, there's lots more.
Well, thank you very much, Frankie. Lots to look forward to then with the Discover Newmarket tours, and especially the chance to see the Gold Cup winner, or 3 times Gold Cup winner, Ascot Gold Cup winner, Stradivarius at the National Stud.
Absolutely. Yes. So we look forward to seeing everybody there, Stephen, and of course yourself.
Joe, as a stallion, what is Stradivarius' average day like?
It's really straightforward, and I suppose it depends on the time of the year. It sort of slightly depends now on where we're at, just the start of the season, depending on what mares and how many mares he's covering per day. But previous to the season started, it was a really simple routine. He'd maybe go on the walker, maybe hand walked. We involve a lot of turnout here at the National Stud. I think it's really important for the horse, be it Stradivarius or any horse, to really go out into the paddock and enjoy and let down and eat the grass and run around, get the fresh air into them. It's really important, and it relaxes them, and it relaxes Stradivarius. He likes doing things. He likes being out and about. And then he'll come in at about 2 or 3 o'clock. He'll be groomed over. He'll be checked over by our stallion unit manager, Niall Kennedy, who does a great job of looking after him. And then he'll tuck into his dinner. Like it's a very straightforward, simple routine. It's not overly complicated because horses don't need complications in their life. They're they're animals based on routine. So as long as we can keep that routine and have it going continuously, then it usually leads to a very happy horse. As I said, now the covering season has started, his routine will slightly change. We cover on average about 3 times a day with the stallion, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and then one sort of later on about 4 o'clock. So depending on how his schedule looks, the day may change slightly, but again, still involved in that really crucial period of turnout time and stimulation out in paddock, which is so important.
No doubt he's been popular as a stallion.
Yeah, we're unbelievably happy with the response that breeders have had to Stradivarius. It's been a fascinating few months. We have breeders who are notoriously speed-based breeders, have always notoriously used fast stallions, but they love the horse so much that they want to breed to him. And we've had a range of mares coming in through the nominations that from 6 furlong mares that have raced over 6 furlongs to a mile and a half. So it's really important, and I said this before, that we don't want to pigeonhole this horse. We don't want to say you need to send him a speedier mare, or you need to send him a sort of middle distance mare. We don't think that should exist. We sort of like to gauge breeders on what we know for a fact, and that facts are that he's an incredibly sound horse. He raced over the course of 7 seasons, has never missed a race through injury. He had a turn of foot when he won his races at a time when most horses would be exhausted. He was able to turn on the burners, and he's got a fantastic pedigree. He's by a champion stallion in See the Stars, and arguably most important, now everybody's different, he's got an incredible physical. He's an incredibly well balanced horse with power and muscles in the right areas, and a very attractive, good walking horse. I think his walk probably is one of his biggest selling points. He covers the ground immensely, really smoothly. And if we look forward into the future of what you go to the sales and what hundreds of people do walking around Tattersalls and Goffs all day, every day, when the sales are on, is looking at a horse walk and how it moves. And we're confident that he'll be able to pass that trait on to his progeny, which then makes them very attractive to purchase at a sale.
And he's priced at a reasonable stud fee, isn't he?
Absolutely. At £10,000, he's a very attractive price for a lot of breeders. We're talking about a horse that had 18 group victories, 7 group ones, 3.5 million in prize money, not counting the bonuses. He won over distances from a mile to 2.5 miles. So when we take all that into consideration, we're really delighted that we can offer this horse for £10,000.
Time Test, one of your other stallions, did some shuttles. I think it was to New Zealand, wasn't it? Will Stradivarius be doing any shuttling?
Look, we never rule anything out with any horse. As I say, we don't pigeonhole, and we don't make decisions and decide that's what we'll do or that's what we'll never do. It hasn't really come up in conversation to date. I think he's a horse that's so popular, well known, and established here in Great Britain and Ireland and in Europe, that we're just focusing on his stallion career here for the minute. But as I say, we're always open to conversations on any horse, any stallion, any country.
Earlier, I spoke to Racing Post bloodstock journalist Kitty Trice, and here are her thoughts on what she thinks of Stradivarius as a stallion. How important do you think Stradivarius is standing at stud in Newmarket and at the National Stud?
It's it's nice just having been there to see, the belief in him and sort of people wanting to get behind him as a flat stallion, because I think there was this sort of train of thought that, Stayer, the market is very much geared towards, or the commercial market is very much geared towards sprinters and speed type horses. So, the fact that he's staying in Newmarket is a big plus, especially for connections as he's just down the road. But I think that, it's great that the National Stud's got him where people can go and visit him, because he's a modern day icon and he was so popular and everyone wants to see how he gets on. And I think being at the National Stud is the best place to sort of realise that. And I spoke to Joe, and they've got a few tours coming up to go and see him, and they sound incredibly popular, which is great news, because I think, we all want to hear how he's getting on. He's such a wonderful character and a very good racehorse.
You think he'll be a big attraction then?
Yeah, he was hugely popular at the races. Whenever he sort of came into the parade ring, sort of usually roaring his head off just to say, I'm here. Everyone wanted to see him. He's larger than life, and he was around for so much longer than a lot of entire horses on the flat, so he just gained that much more traction and popularity, I feel.
And you've already been yourself to the National Stud to see him.
Yeah, so actually I went a couple of times. The first was during the December mares sales where he just settled in, and I peeped over his in the stable, and he looked very happy there, and saw him walked out, and hand in front of us. And then I obviously went a few weeks back to see him, and he was out in the field. He looked great, very happy, as did all of them.
And what do you think he offers as a stallion?
Well, I just think he's, he raced for so many seasons from the time he was 2 to the time he was 8. He's got that longevity and soundness to him, which I think is just absolutely vital if you're trying to breed these horses. If you're trying to breed a racehorse, which is what everyone should be doing, then you want to have soundness. If they're not sound, then that's no good. I mean, I just saw him as a physical. He's not the biggest, but I don't think that is a big deal. I mean, he walks like an athlete. He's got the most amazing walk. And I just think whatever distance you're trying to get, he looks like he'll produce an athlete, and that's what you want. And he's also got a remarkable temperament, just giving him a pat in the field. And he was just so sort of relaxed. He had seen it all, as a slightly older horse going to stud. He was just very sort of calm and sort of, and he's obviously by great stallion and See the Stars, and he's got a great pedigree as well. And I just think you couldn't go wrong if you're trying to produce a racehorse.
Because he did have that burst of acceleration.
Oh, definitely. He has a turn of foot. All the best horses, whatever distance they go over, have to have a turn of foot. And he showed that so many times. I mean, there's so many examples. And what is, it's a subject I could go on about, but this obsession with producing speed, and in particular cheap speed in the sort of commercial market, just doesn't help anyone. I don't think it's short-term profit, but ultimately I don't think this obsession is good for the breed. I think, we want horses over all sorts of trips. I think, you look at races like the Derby, that's what the thoroughbred was bred to do, the flat thoroughbred. And I just think we need these horses who have proved high class, top class over sort of, middle distance, staying distance trips, and they need to be given a chance on the flat instead of just immediately packed off to the jumps barns. It's a bit depressing, but I could go on about it for ages, but I'm not going to bore you.
No, you're not boring, Kitty. It sounds like you've got a love for Stradivarius. Did you get to see him race live?
I did. I saw him a few times. It was great. He and Frankie, and they were just, the popular duo, and then you had Gosden in, and everyone loved Strad. I saw him at York last year, and we got a grand entrance, and you heard him before you saw him come in. He let out this roar, sort of like, I'm here, everyone watch me. He knew he was good, and all the best ones do, but he was just such a character. I think everyone loved that even more. He knew that he was good.
There are also some bonuses connected with his progeny, Joe.
Yeah, the bonus scheme is something that we had planned that we would do with Stradivarius. It's just, he was an incredibly exciting horse. He won bonuses himself. So we thought it would be a good idea to attach bonuses to his resultant progeny through his first crop. So for a 2-year-old winner, for the first 10 2-year-old winners in England, Ireland, France and Germany, there's a bonus of £25,000. That's very attractive for breeders to use. And then for the breeders of a Group 1 horse, there's £250,000. That's in England, Ireland and France. And then it sort of follows down. A Group 2 is 100,000 and a Group 3 is £100,000. So when people sit down pre-Christmas, post-Christmas to do their breeding plans, they look at their choice of stallions. We know it's a competitive sphere that we place ourselves in. There's lots of options out there for everybody, especially within that price range. That's just something that may spur people on to use Stradivarius, that may need that little extra encouragement. I think we'll find there'll be a lot of buzz and a lot of excitement around those 2-year-old winners that are able to get that £25,000, and no doubt that there'll be trainers that they'll want to be the first person to train a Stradivarius, or progeny of Stradivarius. So it's a really exciting it's a really exciting scheme that we're doing, and we're happy to pay out people who achieve what we just talked about.
A little way off, but I bet you can't wait to see some of his foals in 2024.
Yeah, absolutely, I can't wait. And yeah, it is a long way off, you think, but the way our industry works, it's sort of the year just tends to disappear pretty quickly. The covering season will finish, and then we'll get into sales season. And by the time sales season comes around, you're a matter of weeks away from the first foals. So we're really, really, really excited to see Stradivarius's first foals hit the ground. It's always a really nice time. It's always a very exciting time. We've had it, and we're currently seeing more Lope Fernandez foals. As I said, to see a product that you've worked so hard to try and market over the years, it's really satisfying. And when you see real quality, big, strong, lots of bone in Lope Fernandez's foal, it was really, really great, really satisfying, and makes you even more excited now heading towards the foal sales in December, where he's going to be supported by the partnership that we have here in Lope Fernandez. So yeah, it's a very exciting time to see the first foals.
Well, thank you very much, Joe, for joining me on the Paddock and the Pavilion. Best of luck with Stradivarius, or Strad, as we keep seeing on all those jackets at the National Stud, and the best of luck to all the other stallions.
Great, Stephen. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the Paddock and the Pavilion. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at the Pad and Pav. Don't forget, if you like the show, please do leave us a rating and review.
Sports Social Podcast Network.